Hello and welcome to Westminster Wire, the political podcast by SW1 Politics with me, Bill Curtis. On the show today we have Claire Bullivant, who is the editor of the Conservative Post website and has been doing a lot, especially in the run-up to this Conservative leadership election. So let's get Claire on the line now. So hello Claire.
Hello Bill, lovely to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me.
So first, before we talk about the Conservative Post, should we talk a bit about you and what you did before starting the website?
Well, I have to say, I'm actually a huge fan of podcasts. I had my own podcast. I lived in America for many years, and I used to be a podcaster just like you. So bravo to you. Keep up the good show and keep going. And that's all I can say. My podcast was called Brits in the Wood. I did it with a girl called Caroline Faraday. You might remember, I don't know if you're old enough actually, Bill, but she used to be on Capital Radio back in the day with Chris Moyles and etc. And we used to go around interviewing interesting British people who were, living it up and doing amazing things in Hollywood, the Wood. So it was really fun. We got into podcasting pretty near to the beginning, not as early as the likes of Joe Rogan, etc. But it was so much fun. Absolutely loved it, and I'm gutted that we're no longer doing it, and I'm no longer living there doing it actually. But it's part of the reason that I got into my conservatism and setting up the Conservative Post. Do you want me to go through that story right from the beginning, or?
Yeah, so right from the start, when you started the Conservative Post.
Yeah, so I ended up coming back to do some podcasts actually for the British Army. I was interviewing some wounded veterans in Switzerland. They were over there being rehabilitated, and that was in March 2020. And I actually got stuck in Switzerland. It was when COVID just started. They closed the borders, and we were just over the border from Italy, so where it all sort of really kicked off in Europe at that stage. But luckily, because I was with the British Army, they managed to smuggle me back home to my homeland of Britain, and I got stuck here. I literally came back with one suitcase for a couple of weeks and ended up being back in Britain for sort of 3 years, and I couldn't go back, obviously, to the States. So after living in, America, in Los Angeles for 15 years, I was suddenly back home living with my parents, and I wasn't allowed to go back home. So I ended up getting back into the family business, which is regional newspapers. I am a journalist. I was doing that over in America as well. And my parents obviously it was a very difficult time for regional newspapers, well, all newspapers, because our advertising just fell off a cliff. Nothing was coming through. But at that time, obviously, it was so important to keep the show on the road. With COVID happening, people needed local, accurate information and news. So I joined the team and got, rolled up my sleeves and got going. And we had to obviously keep the papers going out and the offices, keep going. We couldn't just sort of close up shop. So that's what I did. And I got back into British news, and I was absolutely amazed, Bill. I had been in America, obviously, for all those years, and I thought a lot of American news was very biased, but I couldn't actually believe how biased the British news had become. I'd see the stories coming through from, Reuters, the Associated Press, the Press Association, etc. And they literally, the mainstream media, the BBC, the main newspapers would just twist so many of the stories, especially at that time, anything to do with Boris. I honestly keep saying to people that Boris could have cured cancer and they wouldn't have reported it. They literally would just ignore the story and just twist it to make out that he was the worst prime minister ever. And in fact, there were a lot of good things that were happening. Just The Guardian and BBC, etc., just weren't reporting it. So that's when I set up the Conservative Post. And by this time, it was September the 15th, 2020. And I remember it because it was Battle of Britain Day. And I set up my own little online blog where I just pump out the positivity that the rest of the mainstream media was ignoring. And that's where the Conservative Post, that's when it was born. And I kept going every single day. Haven't had a day off in almost 4 years. Just been building up and building up and building up. I mean, obviously that first sort of month, I may have had 10, 50 readers or something like that. A few months down, I had a few thousand every month. And some months now, I actually get 1 million. A couple of months I've had 1 million. So it depends on the big sort of campaigns or stories I've been running. But it's just snowballed and it's amazing and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And it's just, I like to think of, I'm not one of these gotcha journalists. I don't like all the gotcha stuff. I like positivity and good news that most of the mainstream media seem to ignore.
And was there a time during the Conservative Post in the early days where there was an abundance of readers coming in at one time, or was it an article that you posted that got a lot of attraction?
Well, obviously, when they got rid of Boris, I started the Boris ballot. Whether you like Boris or not is by the by. I just thought it was terribly unfair that 60 lemming MPs, and I call them lemming MPs because they really did jump off the cliff, they deposed our democratically elected Prime Minister. I'm a firm believer in democracy, and I feel like no MP should ever depose a democratically elected Prime Minister. And I'd say that as well if it was the Labour Party. I'd say it for any party. I just don't think it's democratic. And so I ended up setting up this Boris ballot. I know a very clever chap called Mike, and he showed me that there was a clever little rule in the Constitution that said if you can get 10,000 party members, you can force a national convention. So obviously Boris was not on the ballot. He'd been taken off, but we wanted to get him on the ballot because through my Conservative Post, I could see the members were just furious at that time. So we set this up and it just snowballed. We ended up getting 10,000. We actually ended up getting 14,000 member signatures. It just exploded. We got so much press. We were in all the newspapers. It was at that time I met Lord Cruddas, who helped me considerably get those numbers and take it into all the peers and to the MPs, etc. But unfortunately, CCHQ didn't let us know in time. I kept downloading my database and having to send them, by a secure link because we have to do everything very data protection and very proper. But obviously CCHQ, it was a very difficult period. They were very busy already and they had to verify every single one of those members to make sure that we got to the 10,000. So by the time it was the November, and Nadine Zahawi, who was then the chairman, invited me down to London to talk about it. And they finally admitted I'd actually got to 14,000. We couldn't force a national convention. It was too late. Boris was out. And, Rishi and Liz and Rishi were in. But it just made something click inside of me. People are powerful. If we all get together and stand up for democratic principles, you can really move mountains. So from that idea and that ballot, Lord Cruddas and I set up what's now known as the CDO, the Conservative Democratic Organisation. So every day I'm fighting for democracy for our members, for our party, and I feel like it's the only way to steer our party back to where we need to be. At the moment, so many members have left us. We've seen them go off to reform. We've seen them not being listened to, and I'm there to fight their cause, and we've got to bring back democracy.
So would you say the Conservative Post is for the members, from the members then?
I definitely think the Conservative Post is for everybody. It's not just the members. The CDO, the Conservative Democratic Organisation, which is a spin-off, obviously is for the members. The Conservative Post is just for everyone who loves good news and positivity. And I love my country, Bill. I believe in positivity. I think maybe that was from living in America for 15 years. They kind of instill it into you, and I've come back and I now see Britain through, call it rose-tinted spectacles, but I see how truly wonderful we are as a nation. And I feel like the British people don't. Sometimes maybe you have to live abroad for a long time before you can truly see it. But, we do live in the most wonderful country in the whole world. And I love sharing the good, positive news stories. But our media, sadly, so much of our mainstream media, they just love the doom and gloom, whether it's the clickbait or whatever. I don't know. And yes, we are going through a difficult time right now. Of course, horrible things are happening. But all they seem to report is doom and gloom. They need to start changing and they need to start pumping out positivity too. It works. I've proven that it works. People love it. And I know a lot of people throughout the country who just refuse to watch the news anymore. which is dangerous in a way because they end up getting their news from online sources, 100% online sources, and often they don't read the stories or they don't see the full context. They'll just read a headline and see a photo. So you are then you open yourself up to a lot of bias and possible propaganda. So it's dangerous. But then again, I can't blame them. I haven't watched the BBC News for a while. I recently actually weirdly watched it yesterday, my local BBC, I think it was BBC Midlands Today, and I ended up having to turn it off. They're on there, being very sort of disparaging about the far right thugs and everything that were happening in Birmingham yesterday. And the pictures that they were showing were all people flying Palestinian flags. So, I mean, the disconnect there just was like a hypocrisy to me. And it was just very depressing, it's a very depressing story, but it just, something has gone wrong. Something has gone wrong in our national news picture. I do think there's bias happening all over the place, and it scares me, actually. It does scare me.
And let's get back onto the Conservative posters. You have a Great British News of the Week, I believe, and you list all the positive stories of that week. So have you been doing that for a long time, and how has it grown over the years?
Yeah, I started that probably a year in, so I've been doing it maybe for 3 years now. So every Sunday I just check my stats and put them in order of, the best read story of the week down to the 10th, or sometimes I'll do 20 if there's loads of good stories. But no, it's just something it's funny, I've got so many readers abroad as well, like expats who live in Australia. And if I don't do it by about 4 or 5 o'clock on a Sunday, I start getting emails from, especially this one group of Australian ladies who read it every single week. News from home. They all say, "Where's our news from home? Where's our news from home?" And it's so funny. I've got like little expat groups across the world who love to read the Great British News Stories of the Week. So it's not one of my best read features at all, bizarrely, except it's really well read across the world. So yeah, I keep doing it. I enjoy doing it, and again, I just love to share positivity that possibly other people aren't seeking out, especially business news. People absolutely love great British business success stories for some reason. They just go down so well. If there's a local company producing stuff and they've just won a global, I did one, I think, a few weeks ago, that a British wine company, English wine, had just won like this world title. And oh my goodness, people loved it. And I ended up ringing up the wine company and telling them about it. And they said, "Oh, we'll give you a reader offer." So I've ended up doing this reader offer for them, and it's just flown. Everyone's buying this English wine, which is great. And people love it, and people didn't know about it before. So yeah, I love sharing stories like that.
And you have quite a large reader base as well. You've got over 20,000 followers on X alone. So do you feel any pressure that you have to keep this up, or are you just loving writing for the post?
Well, most of my readers actually aren't on social media. Obviously, I do put everything on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, I think I've got about 20,000 or maybe 20. Is it slightly more than that now? But I'm not sure. But most of my readers are from campaigns I've run over the last 4 years. So obviously after the Boris ballot, I found out, I got everyone, if they wanted to stay in touch with me and receive news and things, they could tick a box, and I could, make sure I was doing it properly and not breaking any laws with data protection and everything. But I've run about 15 or 16 campaigns since then. And I've just been collecting all these readers, all these amazing people across the country and across the world. And so, I shoot it out to them and the main stories, and that's where most of my readership is. To be honest, most of my readership isn't on social media. But yeah, I'd love it to grow more. If anyone's reading this and wants to follow me on Twitter or X, it's Cons Post. So we'd love to have you.
And you also have columnists, don't you, writing for the site? Could you just give us an idea of who they are and what they write about?
Yeah, I've got lots of columnists who now send me their stuff, including I've even had articles from Priti Patel, I've had articles from Dame Andrea Jenkins, Liz Truss, a couple from Dan Hannan, lots of amazing commentators. I mean, sometimes I'm cheeky. I've had to, meet all these people and get in with them and, help them spread their message. So I'll call them up and I'll just say, "Hey, you wrote an incredible article. Can I possibly republish that in the Conservative Post? And if I get their permission and they own the copyright, I'm allowed to obviously republish. So doing that, I've built up an incredible base of columnists, and I love sharing their messages. So anything, I'm just passionate about conservatism, especially now more than ever. I know you have to be political neutral on all this. I'm definitely not politically neutral. I'm definitely conservative with a small c, though. I definitely believe in free people, free markets, free speech, low taxes, small government, and freedom. That is what I stand for. And anything to do with that, and any messages to do with that, I want to share to the world. So I will pump them out there.
And the Conservative Post is going through a vital time at the moment with the Conservative Party leadership election. So how will the Conservative Post play an active role in this internal election?
Well, I did run a very big members poll. So after my campaigns, I've actually got the biggest database of Conservative Party members outside of CCHQ, and they've told me that. So they've all got verified numbers, and they've been verified by CCHQ from different campaigns I've run. And I ran a poll to 14,000 of them just after the local election, after the general election, sorry. And Suella Braverman came out by far in front on that. So I have to be very careful. I mean, I have my own preferences, but I have to be democratic. As I'm also the CEO of CDO, I have to stand for democracy, and I have to go with whatever my readers are telling me, or my or the members of CDO are telling me, and we have to go by a consensus. So at that stage, I was suddenly thinking, right, maybe we should get behind Suella, because the numbers, the empirical evidence was there. That's who the people wanted. But obviously, Suella isn't running now. So I'm about to do another poll. I've just had it all set up. And we're also going to be asking all 6 candidates. We've put together a really good questionnaire asking them things on the key issues. Should we leave the ECHR? Should we do this? Should we do that? How do you feel about this? Blah, blah, blah. So it takes them about 10, 15 minutes to fill in. It's quite detailed. And we're going to also ask all the members the same questions. And then we're going to do a big tally up and see who we think, or who the empirical evidence shows should be the members' choice. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. So that's all coming in the next couple of weeks. The first lot of questionnaires have just gone out. So yeah, I mean, maybe we'll have to come back on and do another show with you to let you know all the results.
Yeah, definitely. From your personal standpoint, where do you see the future of the Conservative Party? Do you think it's an issue of should we go more, well, should the Tories go more right-wing? Should they go more left-wing? Where do you see that?
Well, I definitely am not a one nation Conservative. I think we are where we are and Reform have got millions and millions of voters across the country now, because we have shifted to more of a left-wing stance on certain things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know we're a broad church and all that, people say that all the time, but I do feel like sometimes some of our MPs are out the church door, down the path, along the lane and in the next village. They're not Conservatives. they're Lib Dems who wear blue rosettes sometimes. And, as Conservatives, we're supposed to stand for free speech. We're supposed to stand for free markets, low tax. I mean, for goodness sake, what have we been doing the last couple of years? And small government, less red tape. We've been too similar to what Labour offer sometimes. So I'm definitely to the right of the party. And I'm also for building Britain up again. We are a great country. We have common law. We invented, as it were, kind of, with the Magna Carta and democracy, and we helped stop the slave trade. We spread Christianity around the world. We've published some of the greatest literature the world has ever known. And, we've produced the finest manufactured goods on the planet we have in the past. And I want to bring all that back. Let's start building in Britain again. Let's start making sure we do promote free speech in everywhere. Not just our universities. I know that's the important point at the moment when Labour have just scrapped that free speech bill, which is just appalling. But we need MPs that will stand up to that. And that's definitely those on the right of the party, not the one nation lot. So, and let's win back all our, lost voters who've drifted off to Reform. We need to send out the lifeboats. bring them back. Let's get them back on the boat. Let's get them back on our ship and steer it in the right direction.
So just away from the Conservative leadership election now, does the Conservative Post have anything interesting as well as that planned for the future?
I'm just going to support our party. I want to support our party. I want us to support our MPs. But yes, I'm going to keep campaigning. If MPs aren't democratic, I'm going to hold them to account. I'm a fierce, I want to defend Brexit to the most the most I can anyway against this Labour government at the moment. I'm very scared of what socialism is doing. It brings me full circle really, because I saw what happened in California when I lived in Los Angeles. I saw what the socialists did there. And it happens overnight, Bill. It's very quick. And it happened overnight there when, I think it was about 2018, a chap called Gavin Newsom became the governor of California. And overnight, he did things like relaxed the drug laws, so you could smoke cannabis and stuff. And don't get me wrong, I don't care. I don't do drugs, but I don't care if you smoke cannabis. Do it in your own home, do what you want. I'm all about freedom. I'm a proper conservative. Freedom, freedom, freedom. But overnight, he did that there. And at the time, I lived right in the middle of Hollywood, at a place, it's Hollywood and Highland. So basically, imagine London, like Piccadilly Circus, sort of Leicester Square kind of area. That's it, the centre of sort of Los Angeles. And I was living right in the centre. And after we'd had Arnold Schwarzenegger as our governor for a while and another chap called Jerry Brown, it had become so safe. I'd hear stories from, people, Los Angelinos from back in the day who'd be saying, oh, this used to be such an unsafe area. But I moved there and it was super safe. I could go to a bar and walk back at 2 o'clock in the morning. Honestly, it was well lit, lots of people was around even at that time. It was very safe, police everywhere. It was great. And overnight, when they relaxed that law, it became very unsafe. That I didn't face out onto Hollywood and Highland. I faced out onto the side street. And that side street there just became a drug run. Overnight, there would just be drug deals. And they weren't now dealing in marijuana or something. It was like hard stuff. I didn't actually see the guy get shot, but I heard a guy get shot outside my window. And the helicopters were swirling, police were there, it was a big old rage thing, and that would happen often. Then somebody got murdered in my parking garage lot under the apartment building, and overnight it just seemed that there were homeless people everywhere. It became like a tent city, and all the illegal immigrants, it was made a sort of sanctuary city, so all the illegal migrants could come, and it just became a very, very scary place to be. So I ended up moving out of LA and moving to Palm Springs for a year before I ended up coming home again, during COVID. But and it wasn't just that. It wasn't the unsafeness. It was the way the socialists, they obviously upped the taxes, as they always do, as the left do. A lot of all the mum and pop shops, the small, medium enterprises closed. Services, our trash cans weren't picked up properly. Everything just started falling apart. And of course, California and the left now blame it on COVID, but this was way before. This was 2018. COVID hadn't even happened. And I just saw it was a devastation. And I've come back to Britain, obviously, and I'm seeing it happen here now. And we're already seeing it's a month in. It's already things are happening, which I just am terrified about. I don't, and as I said before to you, Bill, I don't like big government and lots of control. I've been speaking out about 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and unions running the show and ULIS expansions for the last couple of years. I don't often do moany stories ever on the Conservative Post. I'm all about, as we've talked about, positivity. But if there's a campaign to run about things like that, I'll run it, because the people do need to have a voice. And I just hope that I'll be able to help them, because we've got to be free. We've got to stick up for free speech, freedom, and small government. Less red tape. Let's all live our own lives and not have the government breathing down our neck, and Big Brother watching over our every move. Let's go back to a time where we are all responsible adults and can look after ourselves and not be living in some sort of Black Mirror episode, or a Orwellian, nightmare, I call it, because it is becoming a little bit that way, and that's what worries me. So yeah, I want to keep running campaigns like that. So mixed in between all the good news, I'll obviously be keep an eye out for my campaigns, because I'm going to keep going.
And I'm sure that we could talk about this all day because it's a really interesting topic. But my penultimate question is, what is the biggest threat that the UK is facing at the moment, in your opinion?
Well, it's definitely that. It's definitely socialism. The open borders, green lighting through all the illegal migrants who we don't know who they are. Things like unions running the show on everything. I worry about us suddenly losing our sovereignty again, being tied back to the EU, and the loss of free speech and wokery. Of course, we see wokery on steroids appearing everywhere, and also being soft on crime. That was the other thing they did in California, which they're starting to do here. This guy, Gavin Newsom, he ended up making it. You basically, people could go into a store and steal up to $950 and nothing would happen to them. So the police wouldn't even be able to stop them or charge them. And obviously overnight in California, stores would just be, you'd go into a supermarket and even the toothpaste would be behind a glass cabinet. You'd have to ring, ask someone to come and unlock the key or whatever to get things out. It was crazy, Bill. And we're starting to see that here. Crime, we can't have a government that's soft on crime. We've got to start getting society back in order. And the worst way to do that is to allow people to just steal stuff and nothing happens to them. So that is a huge threat as well.
Finally, it's the most important question. Where can our listeners or our readers find more about the Conservative Post?
Well, the website is conservativepost.co.uk. We're also on Twitter, X, which is Cons Post, and also on Facebook, which is Cons Post, I think, as well. And I think we've also started a YouTube channel, although not much is on there yet, but we've got big plans for this year. So keep your eye out for that. Mainly on our website, conservativepost.co.uk.
Well, thank you for coming on, Claire.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill.